I have a question for you there, Nick. Is the resurgence of vVols and that part, might that have something to do with the licensing changes that VMware is doing on vSAN?
My gut says no, because the licensing changes, especially around vSAN, are still fairly recent. If I put my conspiracy theory hat on, there's been a new vendor or two that have come into prominence that don't know how to do much other than block. Go to literally every site one by one, change your password, go through that whole routine, email verification, two-step verification. It's a pain in the butt to do initially, but once you do, it's so smooth.
I'm going to say just take for the viewer here, or for the listener, that Nick being a 1Password user doesn't mean you just use 1Password. You mean you use as a product called 1Password.
The application,
just reference.
It doesn't matter how much training we give them or tell them not to do stuff. They're going to do it anyway. We can't. Got to stop victim blaming people here.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some congressional hearings with the Intel elite coming soon, because we just handed y'all $40 billion of taxpayer money, and you kicked your CEO out, and now you're laying off tens of thousands of workers. Y'all need to come talk to us, because we want that $40 billion back.
Hello again, and welcome along to this podcast. In this case, we're going to be looking at 2024, wrapping it up in a tight little bow, along with our Spotify wrapping events and what have you. And we thought we'd invite somebody who, well, frankly, knows his way around the odd data center. So, data center dude, aka NetApp Global Field CEO, aka the Techarati that is Nick Howell. Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, what an introduction. Thank you so much. Is it Binky? Is that what I'm supposed to call you?
I think we're not going with Binky, but you can call me anything you like, to be honest. I'm kind of used to it by now, so especially with these two clowns. So it's all good. But thank you very much for joining in. Hush, I know.
I appreciate you guys having me here for the end of the year spectacular, the ProAct Unwrapped.
I put a jumper on and everything. You know, it's not that I don't normally dress, you understand, but you know.
Too late.
Too late.
I remember something from Stockholm. I'm not sure what it was, but there was something.
Some kind of syndrome.
Remember, hold on. Yes, syndrome. Or what happens in Stockholm stays in Stockholm. Didn't we discuss this?
You hope.
So this episode, what we'd like to do is have a bounce around the room and just try and figure out things that we thought were really good from this year, or things that we thought were really bad from this year, but just takeaways that we're going to take. So I suppose, if I may, I'm going to start things off with Christian Moen. So are you going to have a crack at this for me first, please?
Yeah, sure. Wrapping up 2024.
Just a highlight, maybe.
On my end, most of my day job has basically been discussing VMware licensing changes, Broadcom ones. There's kind of been two sides to this for me. It's been that part of it, and the other one is moving more into the kind of specific security items that we were working with in Norway as well. So I've had a kind of a split brain year, but by all means, the Broadcom VMware acquisition was. We've had a couple of episodes on this already, so I think I've said most of the things I need to say about it. But yeah, it's been a huge part of 2024.
Have you seen how much their share price has gone up recently?
Yeah, that's mostly AI driven though. It's not VMware driven, I guess. But yeah.
Maybe no bonkers. No, but like I say, but that had a massive, and it still is having a massive impact on all sorts of businesses out there. So I think it's staggering the level of impact that's had. It's the same thing for you, Nick. Have you seen? Obviously, your wheelhouse is more storage, but still the same impact for you.
Well, I mean, 10 years ago, I was on this special team that we had that was specific to VMware. It was about 8 to 10 of us at NetApp called the VTMEs, Tech Marketing Engineers. And all we did was write best practices solutions for VMware. And mine was specific around manageability. I guess it was the kind of corner I stayed in. So it was things like our plugin, FASA provider, vVols. When vVols was coming up, I was on that committee before it was ever really announced. There was this super secret, like behind the scenes meeting up of the minds between EMC, HP, NetApp, IBM, like people that were doing that kind of stuff. Little fun inside baseball fact, guys, so in case you didn't know. But we all there was this UN summit that kind of came together of all the storage vendors that brought brought vvols to life and built the spec around what needed to happen, et cetera, et cetera. So
I remember it.
We've seen,
I remember it. So
storage
APIs
vvols
essentially
come back into the prominent conversation. And can I jump in with a couple of mine since we're talking about VMware? So yeah, the Renaissance re-rise of Fiber Channel has been a big surprise to me. And like I've seen it come back around to be like, for about 10 to 15 years there, it was like, hashtag NAS for life. And we were just all doing NFS and everything. And within VME, we've all of a sudden got a rise. We're going back into block storage. We've seen a lot of customers interested in block storage again. And I think a lot of the cloud has an element to play with that. People being used to using block storage in the various cloud providers might be a contributor to that. But with that comes a renewed interest in vvols. And we're seeing some of that kind of from a technology perspective. That's been an interesting part of 2024 for me, was to see this renaissance of Fiber Channel, or of block, I'll say, not just Fiber Channel, just block in general. And this newly refound interest in vvols.
That's bizarre. Okay, for those who don't know, vvols essentially was a method by which there was a communication between the storage array and VMware. And they understood each other to the point whereby you could present a disk or a LUN from the storage array, and VMware would just sort of like, oh yeah, natively I understand that, therefore I understand where my VMs are going to go. So you'd sort of like bind your VM to a chunk of disk. Yeah. Is that a good description of what vvols were?
Kind of. It turns vCenter into a policy engine instead. And if you take the best things about RDMs from the 2000s and you take the best things about storage policy driven kind of practices from a provisioning and management standpoint, mold those two together, and you get all the performance of RDMs and just raw block storage. But that at the same time, you're a vCenter admin, dating myself. You're a vCenter admin that is simply selecting a set of defined policies that your storage team has helped you define. And when you select that policy, gold, silver, bronze, whatever they may be, it just determines what storage. Is it on an all flash system? Is it on a tier 3 system? Because it's just, so all of that gets defined in the policy so that the VMware admin doesn't have to care about provisioning storage under the covers. It just kind of happens. And that's done through the VASA provider that each of the storage vendors have to create.
So basically you get policy driven management of non-internal storage.
Right.
Basically. Right. So, but I have a question for you there, Nick. Is the resurgence of vvols and that part of that and block in general, might that have something to do with the licensing changes that VMware is doing on vSAN? Are the customers that are now going to fiber or block storage again, smaller customers that don't necessarily need all the other things in the licensing bundles that Broadcom came with? Or
my gut says no, because the licensing changes, especially around vSAN, are still fairly recent. If I put my conspiracy theory hat on, there's been a new vendor or two that have come into prominence that don't know how to do much well other than block in recent years. And I think that might have nudged things. But that's more conspiratorial.
Are they orange?
Than
just out of curiosity, are they orange in their way that they're structured?
Maybe,
just curious.
Maybe
slightly orange.
Maybe, yeah, and best storage for VMware. Okay,
that's just pure speculation, though.
Subjective, right? But I'll say that and we had to answer that because we have pushed NAS and cloud as the end all be all for the last decade, basically. And we were even late to the all flash game, admittedly, right? We were late to that, but we've come full circle. And one of my biggest things for 2024, as both a NetApp fan and a employee, was that we finally, in the best part of a decade, refreshed the entire lineup. Everything is PCIe Gen 5 now. Everything is modular IO. And if I had one superlative from 2024 for NetApp, it was, we are coming into 2025 with all guns blazing as far as hardware performance, the updates to Ontap that are just insane. Some of the stuff that you can do with Ontap. How is that operating system 32 years later still one of the most powerful storage things in the world? And it is, and nobody can deny that.
Still software defined. Yep.
Still very software defined. Still very first party service available in the cloud, and it's Ontap is Ontap is Ontap. And all the Flex and Snap words still work everywhere. 32 years in the making. It's crazy to me that thing is still as relevant and as powerful as it is 32 years later. That's like saying Windows 3.1 is still the best desktop operating system.
Just wanted to say Windows 3.1 is technically still around on 1 billion devices in its core.
Wait,
right?
Which core? Which core?
No, there's still so much stuff left, but I get your point, Nick. It's crazy. If done well, how good a system can evolve and be adapted to the current needs, which are dramatically different than 32 years ago. So crazy.
Do you? I mean, are you finding then? Obviously, NetApp famously, obviously, have your FAS file system, your FAS storage arrays, but you also have a pure block version. In the fact that you have an E-series array. So are you finding people are sort of saying, well, I don't necessarily need a FAS. I don't need all these features. I don't need all this software definition. I don't need all of this stuff. All I want is a LUN. Just give me a RAID group and a LUN. Let's just do that. Are you finding more people are pushing to a simpler storage array?
Yeah. And it's a great question. It's a great point. So the whole point of bringing the ASA stuff back and continuing to refresh it was really at the end of the day about delivering what you just said. There are purpose-driven applications or purpose-built applications that only work with block and that only want like Fiber Channel or some of the newer NVMe over Fabric stuff. That you really don't need to be a storage admin, much like an ESX host. You really don't need to be a storage admin. You need to next, finish, new LUN. Here is my information that I need to mount it. Bob's your uncle. And like that's all. That's what it's really for. Is what at least for me, it is not a full blown FAS, as you say. It is intentionally a scaled down version of Ontap that takes a lot of what some would consider bloat in that situation where you're not going to use some of those things. We've made it really fast, really efficient. I believe it's measured up to 6 nines of availability. We all of the same guarantees that Ontap has around ransomware and efficiencies and things like that are all still valid, but it's a cost-effective, slimmed down version that's just going to be a block powerhouse for you. And the uptake on it has been, it kind of sells itself. The uptake tells the story completely. It's been amazing.
Christian Lehrer, your take on 2024, what did you take away from this?
Too much stuff.
You took too much stuff away. Are you stealing stuff again? We talked about this.
Absolutely. I took something from Santa. Oh, sorry. That's something to learn again when you're online. Turn down your stuff. So, sorry.
I'm in no way fiddling in my pocket to do the same thing at this point, just for reference.
Never. Couldn't ever happen. No, what do I take away? I think there are several things. One of which I did not really expect to grow that fast, but passkeys are finally a thing. And I think that's a very, very good development. Finally, the large vendors are working together and the adoption is coming in from the services side. I think even Amazon just not too long ago said they have hundreds, or not hundreds, but at least millions of passkeys created, which I think is really, really helping basically the society, because theft and burglary and stuff like that is going down, hopefully, with that. So I'm interested to see how that will go on.
It's interesting.
I'm interested to see how it'll get breached. Like what happens when somebody figures out how to breach the passkey store or the key value store or whatever it's backed into, and then all of a sudden we've got 1 million AWS users with their critical systems,
cynical, Nick.
passwords.
So cynical. That never happens. I mean, come on, you never find that the actual
that was actually my first thought when I read, I think yesterday or the day before, that Microsoft is in the next Insider build opening up the passkey API to third parties.
Oh, no.
And my first thing was, I don't know if that is really a good idea.
At least it wasn't panic was your first thing. Quick, pull all your passkeys out of Microsoft.
Well, it's only an insider build yet, so that panic stage comes later. Maybe we will see.
I will say I really like the Windows implementation of it. I'm a diehard 1Password user, and I evangelize everybody using that. But there's an on-ramp to it. It's really hard to get it like up and going initially, because you have to go to literally every site one by one, change your password, go through that whole routine, email verification, two-step verification. It's a pain in the butt to do initially, but once you do, it's so smooth. Everything works. I don't have to deal with these native passkey things. It's universal across all my devises. And I'm going to stick with the third party as opposed to using any of these native implementations that we're going to see.
I'm going to say just state for the viewer here or for the listener that Nick being a 1Password user doesn't mean you just use 1Password. You mean you use as a product called 1Password.
The application,
just reference. Let's just get that in there.
I appreciate that clarification, Tony.
No, totally can understand. And the cool thing is you can share it with your family, right?
Absolutely. The vault is really cool. It's so really much value, and for $100 a year for a family plan.
Totally valuable. Yeah, absolutely.
I use something similar.
But speaking of panic, I have one more thing which I think was also really, really interesting and also pretty recent. The FBI gave out a message to only use encrypted messaging on their networks in the US. And I think that is also really, really interesting. Did you see that?
No.
Or did you?
No, that's the first time.
So this is their internal LAN. They're saying on their internal LAN only ever use encrypted traffic.
Not only on their internal LAN, but on the US communication systems, because there seem to be some Chinese adversaries being active in their systems since a long time, and the FBI. They gave out a short message or whatever saying, maybe you should use encrypted systems only to come back a day later or so. Yeah, but maybe only take ones that we can really tell you to use. So having that backdoor implemented again, we don't know. But still, I think that's a good reminder for everyone to really take a look at how you're communicating, use encrypted email, encrypted
even if you don't have a tinfoil hat, that sort of stuff. Yeah,
even if you don't have a tinfoil hat.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't matter. The NSA can decrypt it all anyway. So, I mean, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, Mr. Snowden came out and told us everything about what they were doing. So the FBI discovering on some Freenet IRC server that there's Chinese hackers monitoring everything. Like, okay, but I mean, Ed tried to tell us 10 years ago. And that's not even Chinese. Like, we're doing it to ourselves. So I'm at this point, like, as long as Apple tells me that my iPhone, as long as I've got the blue bubbles, I know that's encrypted person to person. I definitely love Signal. I'm a fan of that. And encourage people to use that. Stay away from WhatsApp. Stay away from Telegram. Those are don't do those. But yeah, encrypt as much as you can. Password as much as you can. Use password managers and things like that. I think we're getting into boomer territory when like the Gen Z and Alpha kids are going to figure this out. I think we got to leave it to them, but we need to just stop messing with stuff. We need to stop trying to fix this. Let the storage systems handle the security. Let the gateways handle the security. Let the firewalls handle the security. People are going to people. That was always one of my things. People are going to people. They're going to click on the wrong links. They're going to enter the damn credentials into things. It doesn't matter how much security you put in place and how much encryption you use. People are going to people, and that's it. You got to be prepared for the recovery. You got to be prepared for the response, and that is, it's what we focus on with our ransomware recovery stuff with the snapshots. Anytime if in case anybody's unfamiliar, we have autonomous ransomware protection in Ontap. And the second it builds an ML model around every single volume on your storage array. And the simple TLDR explanation of this is that anytime it detects an anomaly, anytime that model says, hey, that file's not been opened for 6 months, but now it's getting like 1,000 writes per second. Snapshot, just in case. And then it'll send you an alert and say, hey, some weird stuff's going on over here. You might want to look into it. And you go, oh, yeah, okay, recover snapshot. And it just puts it back. Maybe you have 2 or 3 files that it got to before the snapshot. but you're just recovering that instead of, I don't know, your entire footprint. That's the ARPSys stuff that happens on Ontap. That's the kind of things that we need to see all vendors implementing across the board when it comes to that stuff. And I'm happy that we're sort of leading the charge on that.
I'm going to say, and Ontap's in a good position to do that as well, because essentially the way that you use storage is quite efficient. I think for the VMwares of this world, it's less easy because they can't just sort of say, oh, we'll arbitrarily snapshot stuff, because every time a VM changes, it just expands and expands and expands. This just grows. So it's very difficult for them to do it. But the way that a modern storage array should deal with it should be pretty efficient. So I think, all storage array vendors should be offering some degree of that as part of their process, I would think, these days.
I think VMware is getting there now with the new vSAN snapshots in ESA as well. Coming up in VCF 9, the next version, they're going to be able to also offload snapshots from vSAN to a secondary site or a different cluster or whatever. So you can actually offload your snapshots the way, kind of similar to what NetApp does today. So they're getting there, but it's not there right now. So yeah, but again, as Nick said, people are going to people, right? I've been an advocate of stop blaming users for stuff. I mean, it doesn't matter how much training we give them or tell them not to do stuff. They're going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it at some point. Every one of us can click on something bad at one point. We don't know. We were stressed out clicking on a link in your email, whatever. It's going to happen to every one of us, right? Even if we work with IT or IT security things can happen with us as well. So the controls and the way we manage those things has to be left outside of the user scope. We've got to stop victim blaming people here, because it's not, for a lot of reasons, it's not always their fault, right?
Yeah.
But that's just how we do things in IT, though. We point at the user.
We're going to blame somebody.
Them, right?
I mean, come on. We can't blame the user. Hello. I mean, we've been doing this for years. What do you mean
you don't have an IT degree, Betty Sue in accounting? Like, what do you...
But we also can't let them completely off the hook, right?
True.
Still try to use your brain at least. But I'm totally with you, Christian.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
we have to help together to do that and to fight basically all that stupid impersonation, phishing, and whatever. Yeah. What doesn't help is doing an awareness campaign every effing week. That would not help. So also it's there. Make it slightly, do it together, educate the people, but also implement the technical guiding rails or however you want to call it.
I mean, like I say, I think the key thing is, even as experienced IT guys, we have all clicked a link at least once.
Never.
That's just a thing,
I haven't.
Isn't?
Nah.
Yeah, whatever, Nick. Surely,
I think it's the beard. Sorry, Tony, I think it's the beard.
Is there just you and you both have it? Okay, great. Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah, I'm packet filtering, with my beard. No, I think it's a very valid point. I think IT tends to have to be Batman, and it's a very thankless job. A lot of times, you have to be out there fighting crime constantly, and we depended on IDS and IPS firewalling systems at endpoints. We thought that would get it done, but that still doesn't defeat the link click in an email that's gotten through the Exchange server. So that's always going to be the case. I think even MS Office is getting better. Office 365, or is it Microsoft 365 now? I can't keep up with how they're changing it. Is getting better about filtering that kind of stuff on the back end in the admin panel for quarantining and things like that to prevent, hey, this looks like it could be fishy. Pun, get it? This looks like it could be a fishy thing. Do you want to release it? So quarantining has always been there in Exchange, but I think it's gotten leaps and bounds better, and it adapts very well to the newer MO of typical phishing campaigns that end users are going to see. So, as I said, IT's thankless. I mean, you guys are the heroes out there in the private IT departments of all of these companies, managing and enabling your users. Kudos to you guys. But and
abusing your users. You don't forget the abusing. You've got to abuse the users as part of the process. That's it's
sometimes they deserve it. But one of my favorites was the old Australian screensaver that would mess with people. You guys remember the Australian screensaver?
No,
it was a Trojan virus, by the way. That was the one I learned. But no, it would flip your whole desktop screen upside down.
Oh, nice.
Okay. I thought this was only done by brothers when the other people left their.
So you could sneak it into the login script for users, and anytime their laptop or their session would boot up, it would flip their desktop upside down.
Nice.
I don't know what's going on.
A mouse that goes the opposite way. That sort of stuff.
Right.
Why do they sound like Mickey Mouse as part of that process? I'm
I
not
don't
quite
know.
sure.
That's kind of hilarious.
I did the. I used to play around with my colleagues doing that. What I did was basically take a screenshot of their desktop and set that as their background image, and then hide their icons. They would almost spend hours trying to click stuff. Nothing worked, right? But hey, so
thank you. It's still a valid way of punishment for people leaving their systems unlocked. So you're learning here if you didn't know it before.
Yeah.
What's the web guy series from the 2000s where he's playing Halo and he does that to Chip, the sales guy, and he copies his thing. It's hilarious that stuff like that still goes on today.
Sure.
Absolutely, it's the way
so
forward.
Tony, what is your takeaway?
I was going to say, to be honest with you, I've gone all business. I think so. I feel like I'm letting you guys down a bit here, but I was going to say, I think to a certain extent, and it's an important topic because it's something that we've heard all year. So I think we've got to say it anyway. But AI, Nvidia in particular, dominating AI. They're sort of like, they released in 2024. They released the Blackwell chip, 208 billion transistors on one chip, split into two. So there's 104 on each. 30% more than the previous one, Hopper and what have you, and they've done their best to sort of like try and tie in a lot of the big providers as well. So they're now in partnership with Dell, they're now in partnership with HPE, they're now in partnership with AWS, and they're essentially, I think, in their third quarter they earned 75% more revenue than Intel and AMD combined. So I think we've heard a lot about AI this year, and I think. So much so that it sort of got a little bit on my nerves with regard to, AI this, AI that. A lot of it isn't AI, in my opinion. It's statistical analysis. It's not AI. But actually, I think when it comes to sort of moving it forward, Nvidia are absolutely smashing it at the moment. They've done that again this year.
I mean, to counter that, Tony, you could also reflect on sort of the failures of Intel. To a respect, the launch of the ARC. I've been doing that myself with Pat's recent departure this week of leaving Intel. I've been really sitting there, last week I should say. I've really been sitting back and sort of reflecting on Pat's career, but two, on some of the things that he oversaw at both VMware and Intel. You go back to the 2016 acquisition of EMC by Dell, and what a mess that was 8 years ago. And could he have infected some change on that? I don't know. We'll never know. We don't sit on these boards. We can speculate on this stuff all the time, right? And then with the most recently him resigning from Intel, what does that mean? What happened with IDM 2.0? Where's all these new fabs in Ohio that are supposed to be getting built? What's going on there? Where's this new Intel ARC? Oh, they released the ARC, and it's competitive from a performance standpoint, but it's very competitive from a price standpoint. And I say this to set up that I remember in 2019, just 5 years ago, I bought a Nvidia 2080 Super GPU for one of my PCs, and it was $400. Why does a similar card in specs, just modernized, now cost $1,500 to $2,000? It feels like there's not a lot of competition out there for Nvidia, and that was my hope that Intel would bring to the market. AMD has not done a good job of bringing that pricing back down with their, the Radeon stuff. So I don't know where the GPU market's going. What I do know is that it's not slowing down. I have colleagues that run data centers around the country and around the world that are saying that their space is booked out for the next 3 years. They have no more room. They have no more cages. They have no more cabinets for people that want to stand stuff up because of AI.
Yeah,
no
and
more power.
Training AI.
So one of my big ones that I'm going to save for the next episode is to do with data centers.
Coming soon, everybody.
Coming soon. I think we are on the verge of something really important, and we're going to find out whether or not we've got the moxie to do it.
Yeah, no,
yeah, that's also, I mean, Nvidia's stock price this year, I think it's up 170% or something like that in 2024, year to date, right? That's not healthy.
No.
I mean, that is a clear fire signal that there isn't enough competition out there, right?
And there was a split in there too this year, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the same thing is happening with Broadcom as well, because they're also doing a bunch of stuff that's AI related on the chip side of things, right?
Right.
And that's where Intel should have been. And I wonder if we would get into this, because Pat Gelsinger has been in my personal kind of career, has been a huge influence, right? Because as the CEO of VMware for the most part of the time I've been working with it, I was there. I was working with VMware technologies before Pat came along, but for the most part of it, Pat was the kind of the CEO of the face and CEO of VMware. I've met him a few times. I've talked to him. Right? He's a brilliant guy. He is. And looking at his legacy, what he's done on the x86 chips, what he did for Wi-Fi, he's done a bunch of really important stuff. USB, right? He's been on the forefront of developing these technologies that we use daily, each and every one of us.
Yeah, but Intel now laying off 15,000 people this year? £10 billion pound cost cut by 2025?
That is all
terrible.
Shareholders. That I lay almost none of this at the feet of Pat. I think Pat had a very big vision, and it was just going to take time to get there, and there was a lack of patience. That is my gut, theory, if you will. Because I think Pat knew exactly what to do, and I just don't think and now you're seeing it with the layoffs and everything. That's the board saving their own hides. That bluntly, and I look at. Go ahead.
As Europeans, right? We've been looking at this kind of from the outside, right? You have the American Chip Act. You have Pat kind of talking to Biden about these things. Does the election have something to do with this as well? Might it have? I don't know.
I'm not going to say no. It's entirely possible, but I don't think anybody wanted to see a stymieing of or stalling. TSMC's in Arizona. They're building more and more fabs constantly. I don't think they'll ever replace the production that they have in Taiwan. It's possible. There's a lot of empty space in Arizona, I promise. There's about 4 UK's worth of empty space in Arizona. And I know because I live in Las Vegas right above it. Same in Nevada. There's a lot of empty space, and we just don't have a lot lot of water. So that's
I'm going to say a lot of cooling required, though, in that particular area, one would assume. Yes.
But my point is like I want to say no, because the entire vision of it was to bring back American jobs. And part of the CHIPS Act was to restore some of that manufacturing prowess that we were known for in the early 20th century. So CHIPS Act was largely funding that with the building of fabs, the subsidizing of building fabs and data centers, over 200 data centers that are being built in Ohio. For what reason, we'll find out. But TSMC is also in Arizona. Because if we can get TSMC in the US, that means all like microchip sort of fabrication and stuff is now being done alongside Intel in Ohio in the United States, which is a much safer position. I think we all around the world understand why that would be a much safer position geographically.
Because then only the FBI can then look at you on that basis, because then only the FBI can spy on you rather than anybody else. Yeah.
But I mean, geopolitically and geophysically, where they're located, it's we can understand why we would at least want to have a backup plan, right? Yeah. So I think seeing through TSMC, regardless of political party and regardless of elections, be successful in Arizona, seeing Intel be successful in Ohio, everybody around the world wins. At least everybody around the Western world wins. And I think it's huge. So I know, Christian, to answer your question, I don't think Pat being fired and the board laying off 15,000 people had anything to do with Trump being reelected to the White House. I believe me, I'm no fan, but I don't think that he would have had done something like that. I don't know that they could have done something like that because. Yeah, Congress passed that bill. That kind act.
Of one of Trump's things is bringing stuff back to the U.S. anyway, right? So that would be counterintuitive if that was related, but you never know.
The only thing he's talking about here in recent days is like saving TikTok. Like that's a much smaller problem than what we're discussing.
Yeah.
But it's really not only the US where this Intel thing is really having some outages. Also in Germany, they wanted to build up a fabric for, I think, 10 billion. They could have gotten 10 billion in subsidiaries, which they still paused. They paused the whole build-up of their factories and everything. So it's really not only taking a toll in the US, it's everywhere basically, because they really have to save up.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some congressional hearings with the Intel elite coming soon, because we just handed y'all $40 billion of taxpayer money and you kicked your CEO out and now you're laying off tens of thousands of workers. Y'all need to come talk to us because we want that $40 billion back. Y'all don't get to just put it in your pockets. So my hope is that we get some questions answered in the next year about like, okay, what are y'all actually doing with that $40 billion if you're just laying people off and kicking your CEO out? You don't get to put it in your pockets and go home and call it a day. So we'll see. I think there's more to come on the Intel saga. I don't think they're done in any way, shape, or form. I just wonder how much of Pat was being more of a puppet in a face when all of the action was happening behind the scenes. I will never know that because we don't sit on the board.
Do we think then that Nvidia are going to be is going to be hobbled or in some way that is someone going to have to force them into sort of like taking their gaming work and separating it from their AI work or doing something else on those lines? We see that from time to time in the industry whereby they chop companies into smaller chunks to stop massive monopolies. Are we approaching that level now with Nvidia?
I don't think so. If you look at the actual dollar values in revenue that they get from data center stuff versus gaming stuff, it's night and day. It's billions and billions of dollars of difference. Yes, what you see a lot is gamers and streamers buying their GPUs.
Yeah,
that is that much of their revenue. The data center based solutions that have, I don't know, 1 million GPUs. And the things that are going on in AWS where they can't get enough GPUs for all of the instances. Azure doing the integration with OpenAI, some of the stuff ChatGPT is doing, whatever Elon's doing with Grok and building his own thing on X. That's where that revenue is coming from. It's not because Nick bought a new 4090. And
you can't afford a 4090, Nick, because they're too expensive. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I'm holding out for the 5090s because it was just leaked that they're coming this year. So,
okay, really interesting. And I've got to say, it's been a great year. I suppose some highs, some lows, but loads of stuff have gone on from a tech perspective this year. So it's been really interesting. And thank you very much for all joining in and sharing your insights. We'll say goodbye, but any passing words before Christmas, Christian, Lara?
Well, maybe... Wait.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Father Christmas has to return to the show.
Christmas to you.
Nice. Nick?
This felt like the year that never ends. I'm happy to see it go. We had a lot of good milestones, but man, it was a long one, and I'm ready to go into 2025. And thank you guys all for an amazing year from those of us at NetApp, and all, not only Proact, but all of our partners around the world. Thank you guys for an amazing 2024.
Great stuff, man. Christian Mo.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same kind of mood as Nick here. It's been a long year, and I know that especially perhaps in the US, the tech market, employment-wise, has been really, really difficult. So, haven't seen that much here locally. There's still a demand for people here, but there's a lot of really, really good people available in the market in the US right now. So hopefully 2025 will be the year for those guys as well. It's been a tough year for a bunch of people, and I hope that 2025 is better in that regard.
Yeah, ditto. At the end of the day, there's been loads of change this year, and I think it's been a very difficult year for the way that many businesses work. So it's a shame in that respect. But IT is change; it always is. So, but we're clever people, reskill, do something else, because I think there's plenty of space left in which people can sort of like step into and say, right, okay, no, I can do this as well. So I hope everyone has a really good Christmas and New Year, and we will see you in 2025.